All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this week's episode of SteepleCats Weekly, your look at the 2018 NECBL season featuring your North Adams SteepleCats. We got a lot to talk about today. I'll get to some baseball. I got some great guests. We've got Chad Minato and Grant Stone from Harvard University. And we've got Matt Stewart to come along, talk about the week that was. I got a quick recap, but we really want to start off with Emily Watts, who's joined us every week and continues to join us every week, about what's coming on in the community. Now, Emily, we have the big July 4th game coming up, and who do we have as sponsors? What can we expect from these festivities? What are we going to see on July 4th?
We're going to see an absolutely fantastic game on July 4th. I have the best sponsors, of course, Mountain One being our major season sponsor, and of course a major sponsor for the fireworks and for that game. I also have Big Y, who has contributed this year, and the City of North Adams. So those are my three big ones for the July 4th celebration, and we're planning just to have the best night at the ballpark. That's, it's one of our biggest nights, and people come for the fireworks, people come for the baseball, and it is a really great night to be there. And we will have giveaways, we will have games, we'll have more fun than you can ever imagine on July 4th.
It is a North Adams tradition to head down to Joe Wolf Field on July 4th. We've got the big fireworks display, and as Emily said, we've got some great giveaways going on. You know you're going to want to be there. You always have been there, and you will continue to be there. Now, some other stuff went on this week, and we want to try to quickly run across those. Now, the rain we had last Sunday kind of put the kibosh on one of the great events that we had coming up, the Pop Cares event at the airport on July 2nd, and that's going to be rescheduled for?
That will be rescheduled for July 8th, and it is the Pop Cares Cruise In for Cancer, which happens at the North Adams Airport, but also we'll have some of my players there, and they will have some of their the Pop Cares folks will have some of their people over at the ball game that night.
So we will expect some great things over there. I went to the event last year. They got cars and they got live music and they got some really good food, and I think we won a bunch of stuff at their Chinese auction too. That was really a whole lot. Come down, come see your friends, come see your neighbors, come see some cars, come get some hot dogs, all that sort of stuff going on. Now, Emily, is there anything else going on that we have to talk about?
Well, there certainly is something else going on.
Well,
it's funny that you might have asked.
It is very funny. We try to have fun here on the show. I know it doesn't always look that way, but believe me, fun is had by all. What's going on?
So I do have another game on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And that will be outstanding as always, another fun night at Joe Wolf Field. But I also have our Hometown Heroes Night on the 30th of June.
And who can we expect to see at Hometown Heroes Night?
We can expect to see a whole host of our local ambulance services, first responders, fire departments, police officers. As many folks from all of the Berkshires that I can get are going to have some sort of presence there. So we'll have a great night that night. One of our sponsors for that is the North Adams Ambulance.
Yep.
So we have them, and it's a really beautiful night to be there and really celebrate all the people who keep us safe in this community.
These guys have seen a lot of stuff, and they continue to keep us safe. They continue to keep this city running. Former police Chief John Morocco operates the scoreboard, has down at North Adams SteepleCats games for 17 years. He's a great presence to be had. So the police, the firefighters, the ambulance drivers, all of those guys, they're really going to deserve the celebration we're going to give them coming up on June 30th, Hometown Heroes Night.
Absolutely. And I will also mention that it's a fairly little known fact that it's the North Adams Fire Department who keeps our lights on
The fire
at
department.
the field. They have a bucket truck, and they help us out if we have a light that burns out on the field anytime they come, and they take care of that for us. So we quite literally couldn't have games any later than 4:30 p.m. if it wasn't for them, among all the other important things that they all do for us.
The North Adams Fire Department, a little shout out to you guys. We will honor you as well as all the other first responders we have up here in the Northern Berkshires on June 30th, Hometown Heroes Night at beautiful Joe Wolf Field. We've got a bunch of games on the schedule. I'll be talking about those coming up in a little while. We've got the big July 4th game. And then July 8th will be the Pop Cares event. So Emily, thanks for coming on the show again.
Always
a pleasure. And we will be back for a little while, and I'm going to talk about some runs, hits, and errors. We're going to see what happened to SteepleCats last week, and we're going to see what's coming up again for them this week. Thank you very much. We are back, and we are going to talk a little bit now about the games that went on last week. So the recap is not brilliant for the hometown nine this week. 5 games on the schedule since our last taping Monday night. A couple came down to the wire, and we got rained out last Sunday, but the end result remains the Cats went 0-4 and now find themselves in 6th place in the NECBL's Northern Division, 7.5 games behind the division-leading Valley Blue Sox. Still, some great performances to talk about by the locals, so let's try to pick up some of the highlights here. Last Tuesday, the 19th, the Winnipesaukee Muskrats came to town, and Harvard pitcher Grant Stone, he's going to be with us later on, got his first start of the season. Let me tell you, this one got off to a terrific start, as the SteepleCats jumped out to a early 5-0 lead, as Jackson Coots, you'll hear that name soon, and Chad McDaniel combined for 2 in the first, and then McDaniel belted a monster 3-run homer off Muskrat starter Zach Euchre in the second, while Grant Stone cruised through 4, actually carried a no-hitter into the 4th, but somebody must have broken the cardinal rule about saying something because the wheels came off the wagon for the Cats pitching in the 5th. 11 runs, that's right, 11 runs off Stone and reliever Jeff Hainer, and the Cats weren't quite done, but this one ended on a sour note at 16-10. 6 RBIs for Chad McDaniel in that one, but the big inning left its mark. Next up, the boys hit the road for 3 against Sanford, Plymouth, and Upper Valley. The game in Sanford was a tough one, as the Cats took a 3-2 lead in the bottom of the 9th, only to have the Mainers' Jake Alou hit a 2-run walk-off double with 1 out off of Greg Gasparo, and that was it. 5 innings of gutsy pitching by starter Greg DiPiazza and a 3-RBI night for Matt Koperniak up there in Sanford. It went for a quick loss. The second game of the trip sends the team out to Plymouth, Massachusetts last Friday for one against the Pilgrims. Another 1-run affair this one, same score as well, a 4-3 loss for the SteepleCats. A bit different storyline in this one as they went into the top of the 8th down 4-0, but a furious 3-run rally falls 1 short. A Joe Porcelli single followed by a Chad Minato walk and 2 pass balls led to a Chad McDaniel sac fly, and there's that man Jackson Coots again with a 2-run homer to take the score to 4-3, where it ended. Jeffrey Brown steals 2 in this one, but Chris Cepeda is tagged with the loss to take his record to 1-3. Next up, a quick trip to White River Junction, Vermont, for one against the division rivals, the Upper Valley Nighthawks, and we've seen this one before. 4 Nighthawk runs in the first inning off of Danny Taggart, and zeros for both teams all the way through to the 8th, where Greg Gasparo, playing center field in this one, comes around an RBI single by, that's right, Jackson Coots. That is all for the Cats, though. 1 run on 6 hits, including a 3-hit night by designated hitter Jacob Jablonski, and they come back home to North Adams with another loss, 4-1. And Saturday's game against the Keene Swamp Bats, or Sunday's game against the Keene Swamp Bats, was rained out and will be rescheduled for Monday, July 2nd, giving the boys a tough week up ahead with games against the Wednesday against the Mountaineers at home. We'll see you there, followed by a trip to Rhode Island to take on the Ocean State Waves Thursday, and out to New Bedford against the Bay Sox on Thursday, then back to Sanford on Friday, and then a big homestand coming up Saturday, Sunday, Monday next week. That Monday game is the makeup for the rainout on Sunday, and a quick run to New Hampshire against the Muskrats on Tuesday, leading up to the big July 4th game we just talked about with Emily at home, here against Sanford. So that was the week that was, and the week to come, we're going to take a very quick fade out, fade in, and when we come back, I will be joined by Matt Stewart, the voice of the Cats, and we'll have a quick chat about what's going on with the Cats and where we can see some going forward and some going even more forward. Be right back. All right, that was a quick fade back in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our television show we got going on here. Back with me, Matt Stewart, the voice of the SteepleCats of the NECBL Broadcast Network. Matt, again, watches a ton of this ball. He sees a lot of it, and now I want to try to pump him for some information to try to share it with you people about what it is these Cats are up to. Matt, 4 losses in a rainout. What can you say?
Yeah, you know, sometimes the game of baseball is a funny game, and, you know, you don't get the hops you need or the bats are quiet, and, you know, some things just don't go your way. And, I mean, obviously not the way the 4-game skid you'd like to have if you're the SteepleCats, but, you know, the NECBL is a long, long season. We still have a lot of baseball left to play, so it's really early to count them out. Nothing should be, no panic button should be pressed or anything like that, but, you know, they just got to get back on track, and the big thing for them is staying hot. You know, you just can't let these Cats get hot. It has really just been the way it's been so far this season, and, you know, it's just really big, and the momentum sort of now with 4 straight, it's bound to turn in their favor. If they get back on track, they should be okay. So it's just a matter of, making baseball come together again and really just make it look fluent, and they should be okay to turn it around.
Sure. Now, there's definitely some big bats coming up here. We have, obviously, I don't know how many times we can talk about what Jackson Coots has been up to. Chad McDaniel had a very strong week, won 6 RBI game, a number of really big hits going on there. And we got a new player from BC coming up. Why don't you tell us about Mr. Cunningham?
Yeah, Jack Cunningham's a guy who, watching batting practice is a guy who can really put some good wood on baseballs, and especially if you put him in that 4-hole hitting behind Coots, it adds another big bat to the lineup. So you're not necessarily relying on everyone to get it done. If you can have 2 big power bats, it could really change the SteepleCats lineup. And he's just sort of been settling in. I mean, he's only a couple games into his season so far, so he's still working out some things, adjusting to wood instead of metal. But if he can come around, it could be another big presence in the lineup for North Adams.
Sure. And the runs, they're coming in bunches. You have these 16-run games, you have these 11-run games, and then you have these 4-to-1 games where they come up with 6 hits, and that's tough to see. Do you see a pattern with that, or is that just the game of ball?
I would honestly just say that's the game of baseball. On any given night, you never know what you're going to get from either us or the visiting team. So any given night, anything can happen, and I think a lot of times it's just been, if you get a couple runs early, you're going to keep going throughout the game, and if you're struggling, then it's going to be an end of the game 1-run battle. And the SteepleCats have gotten in a couple of those so far on their road trip, but it's just a matter of, if you can get the offense hot early, you're more likely to put on more runs, and they just got to work on getting the bats awake early, and then they can really, as we've seen, tack on as many runs as they want.
Sure. Now we've seen, for instance, the pitching rotation. We really haven't talked a whole ton about the pitching rotation. We're going to change that. Grant Stone, as I talked about, he's going to be on the show later on, as is infielder Chad Minato. There's the 2 Harvard guys. That's going to be a great story. These guys are a hoot and a half, let me tell you. But the pitching rotation seems pretty solid. You've had some great starts by Cepeda. You've had some great starts by Danny Taggart. What can we expect to see from this rotation as they settle in? Are you seeing more progress from them as the games are going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys have really established a good starting rotation, and that's big. I mean, Cepeda so far 1-3 on the year, and he shouldn't have 2 losses. The way the games have just gone, it's been 1-run losses that he just really pitched so well and did everything he could, and you just lose those tough games. So for him, that's a record that should be the other way. And we've seen Danny Taggart have some really good performances. Besides for the grand slam he let up the other night, I mean, it was zeros on the board after that. So a guy that can really pitch well, and you have guys coming into the rotation now. D. Piazza did another great job in Sanford. He's a guy that can really be leaned on. Grant Stone coming up in the show is another guy that he gets in that mindset of he's in control and aggressive on the mound, and he can shut down hitters. So they have some solid guys now, and I think that's what they were struggling with early in the season. And once they have that now and it's established, it can really help them.
Sure. So good solid pitching, good solid hitting, good solid defense. It ends up winning games. They're only 7 and change games out of the first place. They're even closer to the wild card spot coming up. So ain't nobody writing this team off yet. This looks like they could still make a pretty good run at it. We'll just have to stay tuned to find out what happens. Matt Stewart, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Voice of the North Adams SteepleCats. And we will be back with Chad Minato and Grant Stone right after this. We are, of course, back here at this table here in beautiful North Adams, Massachusetts, and I am joined by 2 of the fabulous SteepleCats players. We have pitcher number 48, Grant Stone. Welcome, Grant. And we have number 1, shortstop Chad Minato, who took my hand. Grant is now in the doghouse for that one, so I'm going to ask him all sorts of hardball questions now. No, I'm just kidding. We don't ask hardball questions here. We're going to talk about the team going forward. Now, let's talk a little bit about you guys. Now, Chad, you are from California.
Yep, Southern California, Huntington Beach.
And how are you liking it up here in New England?
It's different. I mean, I've definitely gotten a little taste of it in Boston. This is definitely different than Boston also, but I think it's beneficial to spend some time out here, kind of see a different part of the country and get to know like a different area. So
Sure. Now, let me tell you, I mean, I grew up in Boston, and I couldn't have found North Adams the first 30 years of my life with a sextant and a compass and John Barrett III standing next to me. But here we are now, and we've lived here 12 years, and it's a wonderful place to be. Now, Grant, this is Grant Stone. Grant is a pitcher. I don't think I mentioned Chad's an outfielder. Grant is a pitcher. Grant, you are from Connecticut. So
Stamford,
you are
Connecticut.
a New England boy, and you are both attending Harvard University in Cambridge.
Yes, sir.
Now, Grant, welcome to the team. Obviously, you've had your 1 start
Yes, sir.
And it was started off really well. What was going through your mind during that one start there?
So I think a big part of my success in the beginning of that start was establishing the fastball early, getting ahead in counts, and being able to use my off-speed pitches effectively to keep guys off balance.
So you like to pitch the off-speed stuff to the end. What's your go-to fastball? You're a two-seamer or a four-seamer?
I'm a four-seam guy, so I haven't really ever found success in a lot of movement with a two-seam, so I ride with the four-seam.
That's great. Now, Chad, they started you off at short, and they moved you over to second. And I said some nice things about you last week. Make sure I don't regret those later on. But you know, are you preferring short, second? How do you like to play in the infield?
As long as I'm playing, I mean, I feel comfortable at both spots. The transition, like having played short this year at school and then moving over to second here, there was a little bit of an adjustment period. The first game I kind of had some struggles, some issues defensively, but I was able to kind of translate what I had from playing short over to second and then applied that, and since then I feel like I've been pretty good out there.
And you're having a pretty good season at the plate?
Yep.
So far. So what do you think about the pitching going on in the league now? I mean, it seems to me, let me just try to help the people understand the NECBL a little bit better, that you guys are coming in using wooden bats for the first time, but the pitchers are still pitching the same pitches that they've always pitched. So a lot of times I think early in the season the pitchers are ahead of the hitters. Do you think that's true? And it'd be interesting to get your point of view after this.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, the pitchers are taking a more aggressive approach with the hitters early on, whereas with metal bats you don't have as much margin for error on the inside half. I think with wood it kind of exposes that sometimes in some hitters. So with pitchers attacking that, it definitely makes it tougher as a hitter.
You're a shortstop, so the average, you get your stereotype of a shortstop as the guy who's turning inside out on the pitches and hitting them the other way. You hit the other way. Have you looked at your spray chart lately?
Have I looked at my spray chart lately?
Yeah. They put the spray chart charts all over the place now. It's a thing.
I haven't looked.
Yeah,
but I know they're out there.
It's just another example of how statistics have really changed this game. So then the same question to you, Grant. So you've been you come in here and you're throwing to guys who are using wooden bats. Some guys are coming off their freshman year, not really having a ton of experience. Did you see any weird swings coming off of this sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think with wooden bats, it makes the margin for error a lot smaller for some of these hitters, and so I think that pitchers find success attacking the inner half and getting in on guys' hands, and I think that pitching to contact in a wood bat league is a lot easier than pitching to contact in a metal bat league because you're forcing guys to really put good swings on the ball to earn themselves hits.
Sure. Now, let's change a little bit. We talked a little bit right before the camera turned on about the coaching staff here. I don't think a lot of people are really familiar with Coach Justin Sumner and Mike Daly and the other assistant coach they have there, the pitching coach, is he?
Coach Duck.
Coach Duck, right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like working with these guys, what they're helping you do, where they're helping you develop, and where that's going.
So I could start off. I've been working with Coach Daly a lot on my slide step. So during school, something that I was working on with my coaches is getting quicker to the plate in order to limit the opposing team's base running and prevent them from stealing and give our catchers a better chance to throw guys out at second. And so that's something that we've been working on a lot, and that's something that I've seen improvements on in my first couple outings. So I've had nothing but great experiences with him, and I think he's an awesome guy and an awesome coach. And so I'm looking forward to interacting with him more and working on my game and refining it even further. So
there's a couple of catchers on the team. You've got Chris Ruiz, you've got Chad McDaniel. Do you have a preferred catcher, or do you like working with both of these guys?
I like working with both of them, but I'm partial to Chris because Chris is actually a guy who I've played summer ball with for many years prior, and he's one of my best friends from home. So I'm going to have to ride with him for now.
Fair enough. He's a good guy, too. Now, Chad, same question back to you. What are you working on with the coaches, and how are they helping you develop from college ball into the wooden bats and then going forward, because you've still got a couple more years in college and then hopefully some more afterwards?
Yeah, so Coach Sumner and Coach Walters are both there to help us kind of defensively and offensively. So any issues we have with our swings, mechanical or mental, we could ask them about it. They'll give us advice on a daily basis. So we could be hitting the cage, be like, Coach, can you watch my swing for me? Do you see anything wrong? And they'll let us know right away, give us immediate feedback. Defensively, if we just feel like we need reps, we could ask them for fungos and get there 15 minutes before BP, and they'll be right there hitting them to us. So they're always there for us. They've shown that, and they've been nothing but helpful to the team.
Well, that's great. So we have the big July 4th game coming up. You guys going to stick around for the fireworks afterwards?
Oh, it's going to be great.
Oh, it is going to be great.
Definitely.
Super excited.
Oh, like I said, this is really a thing for the city, and I'm sure we're glad to have you. Grant,
Thank you very much for having us.
Chad,
Thank you very much.
Later on, which is, in your time, just a few seconds, we're going to have Dan Wallace come down to talk about the new exhibit, One Country, One Game, downtown in North Adams. It is a real barn burner down there. It's beautifully curated, lots of great memorabilia. You want to stick around for that. So again, Grant, Chad, thanks for coming by, and we will see you in a second. Gracias. Buenos noches, amigos. We are back at SteepleCats Weekly. My guest is Dan Wallace. Dan Wallace is the curator of the One Country, One Game exhibit at the former Sleepy's Mattress Base on the corner of Main Street and American Legion Drive in North Adams, Massachusetts. Dan, thanks for coming by. Thanks for setting it up. Let's talk a little bit about this exhibit. Now, there's a lot of great content. Where's it come from, and how did it get here?
Okay, so the initial idea of setting an exhibit downtown during the course of the summer came from the New England Collegiate Baseball League. They're celebrating their 25th year of play this year. They wanted to do something to celebrate that occasion. Val Hall from the North Adams partnership set out looking for something to bring into town. She got in contact very quickly with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. Spoke to Dr. Ray Doswell there about traveling exhibits that they have. The one that was selected because of its content was the Shades of Greatness exhibit. It was curated by Dr. Doswell from 32 independent artists who have built works either specifically for the show or had works previously having to do with the Negro Leagues and its history, the emotions that went along with it, some of the stories that are within that storied history.
And there's a lot of content local to Berkshire County in this exhibit?
There's not actually, but there's some really interesting connections, because when I first came on I said, gosh, like what does this have to do with where we are? And the very real answer is that the founder of the Negro Leagues, as they're kind of imprecisely laid down between the 1920s and the late 1950s, was kind of an up-and-comer while one of our own local greats was coming out of pre-Negro League play. That was Frank Grant, who was born in Pittsfield, raised in Williamstown. And he went on to a very illustrious career. He was one of 3 players who were left in the International League after the Gentleman's Agreement in the late 1880s, which basically said that the professional baseball was not going to offer contracts to people of color anymore.
So that's kind of history that affects sort of everybody, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of other stuff can we see? What sort of pieces do you have in the exhibit, and what can people go down there and take a look at?
Well, definitely the crown jewel of it is the traveling exhibit. It's the artwork within it is widely diverse. It's extremely beautiful. Some of the works are kind of showstoppers in and of themselves, and to have multiple images next to each other is very, it's a good show to take in. The second half of it was that going along with the more emotional side of segregated baseball, talking about our ties in the region to that story, as well as the long history of baseball within the Berkshires. One of the major contributors to this show has been the Baseball in the Berkshires Museum down in the Berkshire Mall. They have been open for just over a year now, but they've collected hundreds of stories of individuals who have either gone on to major league careers, or they become umpires, or they become agents. There are individuals who grew up around here who have ties in just about every aspect of the game that you could think of, and that's for hundreds of years now. It goes all the way back to 1791 with the broken window law in Pittsfield, which kind of establishes that baseball was mentioned for the first time in a legal document as far back as the 18th century.
Right. I think a lot of the local historians and people who follow that story know about the broken window declaration. So, Dan, you curated this exhibit now, and I happen to know personally that you've got some work under your belt for the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
Correct.
And that's got to be an awesome thing in and of itself, definitely worth another conversation. But I assume some of this stuff doesn't just sort of drop up in a truck and then throw itself up on the walls. As the curator of your exhibit, what did you have to do to get the stuff organized and presented and have a really cohesive message to send for this?
Typically, it can be a very arduous process because you're trying to go out and find stories that haven't been told, or retell stories that people think they know, but might have a little bit of a different history through evidence. One of the things that I found unbelievable about this exhibit in particular is the amount of work that people like Jim Overmeyer and Larry Moore from the Baseball in the Berkshires Museum, Paul Marino and his research locally having to do with baseball, a lot of the items that are over in the Williams College archives, a lot of this was ready to be formed, ready to be pulled up into exhibit text of one shape or another. Player focuses the Sabre Bio Project, which is a cohesive group of hundreds of historians throughout the United States who point to a player and then write a 1,200 word bio on that individual, were ready and available, and everyone was generous with saying, of course you can use that, we'd love to get that story out. And that's been really encouraging, because the more we look at things, the more we know that there are other stories out there that are going to resurface. Only the other day when we were doing the press conference, Tammy Daniels said, "Oh, I'm surprised there isn't anything about Miss Hall School." And we said, "Hey, well, tell us a story about Miss Hall School," because I wasn't familiar with it. So 1974 is the Supreme Court decision that says that you cannot preclude people from playing baseball based on gender. So a young woman fought all the way up through the Supreme Court to say that she could play on her Little League team. And it is kind of one of those watershed moments where you say, okay, great, like finally we're rectifying a situation that should have never been.
Right, long overdue.
Yeah, and she said, but if you could look back further, Miss Hall School was actually fielding a baseball team in the early part of the 20th century, and they were taking on competitors. They were doing, basically barnstorming at home. So there were several players from there who actually played Little League within the Pittsfield Little League system at the time, who were playing as women, young women, in an era when nobody really thought to invite them on.
See, it is really all about stories, and stories like that, and so many more. So Dan, when can we, what are the hours of the exhibit? When are they open? What do people need to do to get down there?
So we're located right on the corner of American Legion Drive and Main Street in the former Sleepy Space. Yep. It is open from noon till 6, Wednesday through Sunday. Admission is $5 for adults. If you have a Mass Mocha ticket stub, you get $2 off, so it's $3. Seniors are also $3, and anyone under the age of 16 is welcome for free.
Anyone under the age of 16 is welcome for free. That is good news. Now, Dan Wallace, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
One Country, One Game at the Sleepy Space. We have one more quick thing. Now, remember, tickets for the 25th game on the Sunday will be honored for Monday's game, or Monday's makeup game at Joe Wolf Field. We would love to see you there. This has been SteepleCats Weekly. My name is Ross Jacobs. Thank you for sticking with us this week, and we will see you at the field, and we will see you on the air.